joining us today, and I've done my research on this, and this is a very hard and comprehensive and in many ways profound list, this bio, but it's someone a bit different for us. I don't believe they've taken many speckies or kicked many goals at the MCG, though we may find out quickly that that's not the case. They were the CEO and advocate for World Vision Australia. That's the Reverend Tim Costello who's joining us today. But then I just want to go through this list as well. Tim also received the Victorian of the Year Award in 2004 in recognition of his public and community service. He was made an Officer of the Order of Australia in 2005. He was a nominee for Australian of the Year. He's the 2008 winner of the Australian Peace Prize and was awarded by the Peace Organisation. And then this is my favourite one. He's listed by the National Trust as a national living treasure. And now he gets to add to that list. He's on the Footy with Broden Kelly. Reverend Tim Costello, thank you for joining us.
So good to be with you. And look, I'm very disappointed in you, Broden.
Why is that?
If you had done your research properly, you would have known I played Masters footy, Legends footy till I was 55. Oh. I won the goal kicking, for South Yarra. I never got out of that 10-yard square at full forward. I was a full forward, but I was very fast in the square, very fast.
That's genuinely very impressive. How many goals did you kick in a year? What are we talking, 150? What are we talking?
19.
Fantastic.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, we only ever played every 2 weeks because it took us 2 weeks to recover. We're old boys.
Yeah, fair enough. We've asked you to come on, Tim, because of your role currently with the Alliance for Gambling Reform. We've been doing Footy podcast for a year now, and we've found very quickly, well, personally, not to go into too much detail, but the amount of money that we've had to turn down from people who've approached us to sponsor us, but then also just that we found very quickly that it was very hard to find a window where gambling wasn't talked about or covered or promoted in any facet. So I just wanted to, the reason for bringing you on was just to have a chat and bring a bit of balance and get the other perspective, because it feels like gambling is kind of represented from one perspective over and over and over, and it might be cool to talk about it from another perspective. So what's your role with the AGR?
So I'm the Chief Advocate for the Alliance for Gambling Reform and helped set it up. I've been sort of on this horse for 25, nearly 30 years. So long my kids, when they were teenagers, looked at me and said, "Dad, is there any campaign you've backed that's ever won?" Gambling, I was sort of on my own 30 years ago. Now, when it comes certainly to pokies, the public agree with me. And when it comes to sports bet ads, the sort the AFL push, the public agree with me. They're sick of it. They're having a psychic vomit. They're going, our kids just want to watch footy. They don't want to know the odds when they're 10 years of age. Why do they know the jingles and the odds and the logos of sports betting companies? So I think at least I'm winning some public opinion for once after 30 years.
Yep. And how has gambling advertising changed in we'll say 30 years, but even in 50 years? Because I don't remember watching footy as a kid and the relationship that gambling had with the coverage of it. But in your lifetime, at least, how has it changed and how has it evolved?
Oh, it's profoundly changed. So the only sports that existed for gambling were racehorses and greyhounds.
Right.
And the TAB, when it was opened, couldn't serve food, didn't even have seats. The idea was we weren't going to encourage this socially. You could go in, place your bet, you couldn't buy food, drink, you couldn't sit down. And culturally, the police department that headed this up was called Vice and Gambling. Vice saying this is addictive, corrupting, we don't advertise it. So what's happened is it's massively accelerated. It's spread to footy, to NRL, to cricket, to soccer, to tennis, and it's $300 million in advertising a year, far bigger than Harvey Norman. It's the big gorilla. So that's what's culturally changed. It's jumped out of being state regulated, no food or seats at the TAB, to being state sponsored, to literally dominating our culture and our sport.
So was state regulated, and now that's kind of backed off? Is that essentially it? How has that happened?
Well, basically, it was regulated to say this leads to vice and crime, and that we don't encourage it and advertise it. To state governments, with the advent first of pokies and now sports betting, and AFL clubs, as you know, got into pokies, going, wow, there's a big gambling windfall gain for state treasury. Wow, we'll promote it. We don't mind it. We'll let it rip. We forget that these gambling licenses, whether they're pokies or sports betting, are state licenses. They're owned by us, the public.
Right.
And it's gone from saying, no, you're not going to advertise, no, you're not going to have this in our face, to the state literally, because of the money it gets, promoting it, sponsoring it, pushing it, until the pushbacks that we are making now.
So the state government representing us, they give license out to places like Neds or Sportsbet, and does that mean that the state receives a commission on the revenue they make?
So what happened was states didn't license the Neds and Sportsbets. The Northern Territory did. It was a backdoor. They all got licensed there. They paid virtually no tax. But now what state governments get is a point of consumption tax. So for all the bets in Victoria with Sportsbet, Neds licensed in Northern Territory, the Victorian bets allow the state government to get a point of consumption tax. They're getting money from the turnover of bets in Victoria for companies licensed in the Northern Territory.
Gotcha. That's very interesting. Now, on that, with the AFL, what's the AFL's relationship to gambling organisations? Because I would imagine they'd be not connected at all. Is that the case?
No, sadly, the AFL is the biggest sports betting gorilla now on the planet. Literally. We have not only the greatest gambling losses in the world, in Australia, 40% higher than the nation that comes second, but when it comes to sports betting losses, they're 20% higher than the nation that comes second. And the AFL is the biggest player, much bigger than NRL, much bigger than Australian cricket or tennis. And the hypocrisy of this hit me when I remember seeing Gill as AFL chair and CEO, and he said, I'm fine with you pushing AFL clubs to get rid of pokies. Yeah, they do damage. As soon as I raised the AFL and sports betting, it was a completely different story. And that story was Andrew Demetriou, who hands over to Gill, leaves as CEO of the AFL. His next big job, first big job, is head of Crown Bet at Crown Casino. And he does a deal with his protege, Gil McLaughlin, and enormously profitable for Crown Bet, for the AFL, for Demetriou and for Gill. Enormously profitable.
So Demetriou walked out of the AFL straight into Crown Bet, a gambling organisation, who then made a deal with the AFL directly. That's right. And
it took off from there. So when you look at now the biggest gorilla in terms of sports betting, it literally is the AFL, particularly pushing multis. And as you know, your chance of winning a multi is infinitesimally small, 1 in 10 million. And that the payouts for winning a multi are really small, like $3,000.
Yeah, right.
And they're pushing these multis all the time. They're certainly creating the illusion of sociality, community mates. Bet with your mates, And it's fine to have a bet at the pub with your mates. But what the AFL really are trying to do is say, you did that on a Saturday afternoon. We plan on you betting at 3 a.m. on Sunday morning on your own, without your mates, targeting young men and now targeting young women. So multis and we own community and mateship, bet with your mates, has really been insidious.
So that you would say that was my next question: is what are some of the moves that gambling organisations are doing that people like myself would be less aware of? But that's interesting. So you would say that the approach is to go, this is a social activity, like going to the pub or having a drink. It's a thing you do with your mates, but we assume that you'll stick around. That's the
and not only stick around, but then you will be the target of their social media.
Gotcha.
TikTok, Instagram, we know a lot of that's going to minors. We know Facebook says we regulate this stuff, but it doesn't. Secondly, direct marketing. The direct marketing by the AFL is almost more ruthless than the ads we see on TV. So direct marketing is when they send you a text message, this game is on, these are the odds. If you have an account, they ring you up. If you stop betting, they give you an incentive and encourage you to bet. Constant direct marketing underneath our eyes, but we don't see it. We just see the ads. The ads are bad enough. In Victoria, 943 ads on free-to-air TV a day. A day. In Britain, it's 14 ads a week.
Oh my God.
Wow.
In Spain, in Italy, in Belgium, they banned sports betting ads. You can gamble, but you won't have the ads in our face all the time. This is why in Victoria, it really is the belly of the beast, and it's driven by the AFL.
That's insane. So we have more free-to-air by hundreds and hundreds of ads a day. We have more ads than the UK and anywhere and other places like that, I imagine.
Absolutely. These are foreign-owned sports betting companies, most of them, like Sportsbet, registered in the back door of the Northern Territory, targeting all of us, particularly young men and young women, to gamble, but then really shaping our kids. So our kids' heroes, footy heroes, and I love my AFL, literally they now know the odds, the odds of a game as if football heroes are racehorses or greyhounds. That's the profound culture change of normalising, mainstreaming. Now, people say, yes, but it's legal. Yeah, well, cigarettes were legal, but we don't allow, and still are legal, we don't allow tobacco ads all over our footy.
100%, yeah.
The ads, by the way, can be on in the 6 o'clock news at night. You can't even have an alcohol ad on before 8:30 at night.
Really?
Absolutely not. So this is insidious, pervasive, and the AFL have really been the driver of so much of it.
So what is the AGR's hopes for reform? What are you looking to do? And what are the things that should be done? And how can, if people want to learn more, how can they learn more?
So what the AGR, the Alliance for Gambling Reform, is doing is saying to our Federal Minister, Michelle Rowland, Minister for Communications, ban the ads. We had Peter Murphy, who's just tragically died before Christmas, a Labor member for Dunkley, who chaired an inquiry and came up with 31 recommendations. On her committee were Liberals, Nationals, Teals, Greens, multi-party consensus. When has that ever happened in our federal parliament before? Multi-party consensus to ban the ads. That's their number one recommendation. That came out in July. We are still waiting for the Albanese government, and for that matter, Dutton, to actually respond. But that's what the recommendation is. That's what the Alliance for Gambling Reform wants. Guess who's opposing it with all their might? The AFL. The AFL, because it's the honeypot for them.
Wow. That's so, okay. Well, that's good to know and sad to know. Depressing to know, but at least there's okay. So what does that look like happens from here? Does that need to be passed or?
So we are the government had 6 months to respond to that recommendation and hasn't within 6 months. They keep kicking it off because we know the AFL and some of the other 7, 9, 10 broadcasters are in their ear saying, don't you dare. So really it is a David versus Goliath fight now. Will the government be on the side of the powerful vested interests, the Goliath, or they stand up for parents? There's not a day, literally, where a stranger in the street recognises me, usually a parent, say, I am so furious that my 10-year-old, 12-year-old knows all the odds, that they are being groomed. They are being groomed to be gamblers.
Yeah.
See, why the social media campaigns of the AFL continue is what happens is people who bet regularly for a year, maybe 2 years, can happen quicker, go bankrupt, or they start stealing and they go to jail, or their wife kicks them out. And that means they have to keep grooming the next generation to become gamblers. That is actually the business model. That's why you see so many ads on TV, such pushing, Nathan Brown always, Mick Malloy with the multis. They have to groom the next generation because so many people, young men, literally go bankrupt. Some go to jail. Tragically, some top themselves. And I've done 6 funerals of people who had gambling addictions who took their life. They were so ashamed and desperate. That's the cost. That's the shadow cost that we're not being told.
Thanks, Tim. That's a really great chat. And yes, I'm just happy that we got to put you in an area where I don't think a lot of people have this conversation. So we really appreciate you doing it.
Thank you very much. A delight to be with you.
Who's your tip for the flag this year?
Well, of course, it's got to be the Bombers who I support, although I do notice, when we had our disaster, we were the only AFL club that took non-drug enhancing, non-performance enhancing drugs, and we've never recovered.
No, that's right. Fair enough. Thanks for your time, Tim.
Thanks a lot. See ya.